Ever since founding his firm in Paris in 2000, Jean-Louis Deniot has brought a cool contemporary edge to French glamour and applied his distinctive take on French style to projects around the world. His work is always lush, but never overdone, contemporary, but always inclusive of the past, and bold, yet always comfortable. His projects have been published in virtually every major magazine, often on the cover. His work always incorporates artisanal elements and sumptuous materials, custom pieces, and dazzling decorative effects. Yet he prides himself on coming up with practical solutions and always serving the needs of his clients. He's designed furniture, lighting, and accessories for Baker Furniture, George Smith, Gendarmerie, and numerous other companies. His new book, Destinations from Rizzoli, charts his work on 18 projects around the world. Spaces both grand and intimate, in buildings both historic and new, and in styles ranging from urbane to rustic. Yet all have that special Deniot touch that proves that high French style is a global force. So welcome, Jean-Louis.
Hello. Thank you, Michael.
It's so good to see you again. And congratulations on
So
your
good
book.
to see you. Thank you so much.
I have a copy of the book
Oh,
here.
that's so
which
great.
is fantastic. So I'm encouraging all my listeners to go out and get the book.
Yes, please do.
Jean-Louis, you know what's interesting to me? One of the things is you talk in the book, and I've heard you say this before, that you consider yourself a storyteller. And I'd love if you to talk a little bit about that, how you see yourself as presenting the story of your clients or...
It's just like in life, human being normally is made of repetition. And I think repetition is actually quite boring. And so I want to make sure every day when I go to work that I still do the same job, but in a slightly different way. And so for that matter, I always try to write a story about each job. So it becomes really site specific. It becomes, material specific, finishes specific, and it emphasizes also the location of the site. And for that matter, I really enjoy having some very specific goals, and specific ways to tackle each project.
Right, because there's nothing cookie cutter about your work. This whole book, there is such a diversity. And I wanted to ask you, another thing you say in the book is that you always, right at the beginning, you look for flaws and mistakes. And I'd love you to talk about that a little bit.
Exactly, Michael. I think, when you do a design, you actually don't put just sugar coating, on the nice bits. You actually need to work the awkward parts and turn a default into a quality, and then certainly everything turns out to be flawless. It's very important never to ignore the flows, because the flows always transcribe, within an atmosphere or within a lifestyle, so you need to work on the flows, in order to actually enjoy the beauty.
Well, I think if you pretend the flaws aren't there, they're going to reassert themselves sooner or later. So
Exactly. Just like in the human being,
Yes. Now, Jean-Louis, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your early days, because the book, and as I know, having worked with you over the years, you have done some amazing projects, the scale of which is, impressive. But I think when you first started out, one of your first projects, was much smaller. I think it was almost like, you describe it as almost like a garden shed. So talk a little about your early years. Like who was the person who really first came to you and said, I want you to work on my project?
Thanks to you, Michael, because you were one of them. You know that you actually trusted me early on, and I'm forever grateful to you.
Oh, please!
Because you've been
I just recognize your brilliance.
You've been so generous to me, so thanks to you. But I always think, whether it's a garage, it's a studio, is if you have something to say, start saying it early. And try to take great photograph of it, to illustrate your goal, the best you can. Try to get it exposed, and from starting in the shoebox, you eventually get, to two shoeboxes and then three shoeboxes, and I say also that there's no big and small projects, in my heart, they're all totally equal, but you have to start somewhere, and start with no complex. Take design risk. Don't try to duplicate anything you've actually seen, in someone else's job, because otherwise you'll really have trouble, to impose your own style, And if you believe in your own style, and if you have customer to believe in your own style, trust the journey, because you'll be in the future respected for that. You will never be respected from doing a pale copy of someone else's job. You will always be more respected from having your own point of view. And the more you can actually realize, your point of view in many different ways. It can be, a booth, on an interior design show. It can be a friend who's asking you, to decorate their living room. It can be someone else who's asking you about a bedroom. What matters is to be able to exercise and to produce as often as possible. It's just like, professional athletes, they become great by repetition. And I think in design is the same way. The more you practice, the more it becomes a second nature, and the more you can actually push the limit of your own design and take those design risks and get to the next step of your own career,
And was it? I think it's totally true. It's like they say in the theater, there's no such thing as a small role. If you can bring your stamp, you will be noticed and stand out. And I think
Exactly.
also it's probably now easier for designers because of Instagram. You
Exactly.
when you
Because
started
today,
out, you had to be published in many of the
yes,
international magazines. Now there's not so
yeah,
many of them, sadly.
yeah,
But
and you had to deal with the publishing, rejection too, where
yes,
today you can be your own publisher, so
it's
it's,
true.
and whoever loves you follows you, so
Right.
how fantastic is that?
It is fantastic. But when you were starting out in 2000, was it hard at first? I mean, obviously you worked, like you said, work with a friend or whatever, but were because you have a very, I wouldn't say extravagant, but it's a very detailed way you approach a room. I mean, it's like every detail is thought about, the finishes, there's a lot of artisanal things in your work. Was it hard for you to convince clients to trust you at the beginning?
No, I think, if you really believe in what you're selling, if you really believe in what you're conceiving, and and there's something actually pleasant, out of it, and you go to a thrift store, you find a cute lamp, you spray paint it in a different color, you do a custom shade, you put it on the right piece, and you just do with the materials you have, you don't need
Mhm.
pieces with pedigree, you don't need,
Mhm.
fancy things coming from fancy galleries. You just try to illustrate, your vision with what you have. And when there's truth in design, people can see the truth, and if there's something which is extra natural out of what you're delivering, the clients will just go for it, and I must say, the first jobs that I did, were quite classical, because, when you're young, if you know a bit about history of art, that's how you get your first jobs. It's because no one will ever hire you for something highly conceptual when you're just
Right.
starting your firm. Where if you have a little bit of an academic, background or academic interest, and that's where you have more jobs opportunities.
Right. Right. Well, it's so interesting. I mean, you mentioned in the book that when you were starting out, one of the big influences, and I think you worked with him for a bit, was Henri Samuel. And then you also mentioned Alberto Pinto. So were you looking at their work when you were young and as a student? How did that evolve that you became so influenced by them? And what was it about that
Um,
really affected you?
I never worked for anyone.
Oh,
I
interesting. I didn't
no,
realize that.
yeah. It's because I did an internship, for someone who was who made, the 2 weeks internship quite miserable to me, and I decided that because I was starting from scratch, I decided, okay, let's just really start from scratch, And because I was worried that, in the mid-30s, you get the comfort, of a salary, if you're employed somewhere, and it will be even harder to start your own firm. I think today, and with all that craftsmanship, which coming back on track, everyone can start their business early on. I met Henri Samuel when I was very young, and it was before going to school, and because I wanted to suggest him to actually train me. But he was actually too old and without enough jobs at the time anymore,
he was winding down.
Exactly. But what an amazing person. Because what I really appreciated is the level of eclecticism, and the level of interest and curiosity in that and culture within one single person. Absolutely fantastic person, absolutely fantastic designer, collector, and visionaire. And Alberto, I was completely fascinated with the destinations, the fact that he could have the same type of level of quality and something very even, no matter where it was. If it was in Cairo, if it was in Brazil, if it was in Paris, if it was in London, certainly, he was completely adapting to the local flavor with that same sense of detail and that same sense of quality. And so I realized that how fantastic that it makes your work so diverse, certainly. You don't do the same thing, the same style, whether it's a 200 square feet, or 2,000 square feet. That's what I love about writing some specific story per jobs. And that's what I really enjoy with Alberto Pinto's work.
Yeah. And that's something I want to ask you about. Is like, because your rooms, your houses, your apartments that you do, all have, like I was mentioning, these very beautiful materials like straw marquetry or parchment, French polished wood. And in Paris, those skills, those workshops still exist. I mean, a lot of American designers I know have told me they have a frustration with finding artisans to execute things, whether it's upholsterers or whatever. I know you have that in Paris, but has it been hard for you on your projects around the world?
What I'm just suggesting, guys, is to really value, the handcraft and the human hand labor. I think it's very important that people stop, doing those studies, of becoming a lawyer or becoming a banker when it's actually not something they would love. We need to value how fabulous it is, for the human to create with their hand. And that's what I really hope for the United States is to have schools and training, so there's more young people interested about plasterwork, about wood carving, about upholstery, embroidery, tassel making. There can be so many, and I really hope that in the new generations, they're going to really value what can be produced out of the human hand, because they will be far more successful out of working with their hand than being a lawyer or a banker.
Right. And we've talked about this on a couple of episodes. In America, everybody's pressured to go to college, and that's not always the right solution for everyone. And they end up with a lot of debt.
In the meantime, no one can blame anyone. It's because it's been totally undervalued,
Right. It's true. It's true.
And it's amazing. Now you can have a plumber and an electrician who actually is making much more money, than an actual banker. That's and the electrician or the plumber is actually much happier about their business than being a banker.
Right. But have you noticed in Paris that it's these traditions of handcrafts and artisanship are continuing, or is it a problem in Paris as well?
No, it is continuing. It is continuing, and thanks to the great groups, the Chanel group, the LVMH group, because out of, having so much success, with fashion, they're employing, so many handcraft, and they're keeping people trained, and they're really keeping, the French artisans alive, and forward, and that's what I really wish in every country. In Morocco, you have amazing artisanship. You go to India, it's unbelievable. We really need to value what's made out of the human hand, because Because, for example, when you look at 18th century furniture, no one's really looking, or 19th century, no one is really looking at it. If you had to manufacture those same pieces today, it will cost an absolute fortune.
Right.
We need to realize that those are one-off, they're one of a kind, and how the level of quality of those pieces is unparalleled, to anything which can get manufactured today.
Right. But sometimes those antiques need to be refurbished or repaired or refinished. And, to have people who can know how to do that is a challenge. Like, I know when you're working in Paris or Morocco, you have those resources. But what about when you're doing your projects in Miami or Los
You have
Angeles?
you have Mexico.
Okay, Mexico. They're beautiful. They do beautiful things in
Yeah,
Mexico.
exactly. They have amazing,
Right.
handcraft also,
Mhm.
it's
So,
no,
in other
it's
words, you're out looking for this all the time.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
and
And also because I love the collaborations, with any artisans, certainly you share the same passion, and I don't know, there's a level of comfort, and the level of interest, which is so high, with any artisans you get to work with.
right, right. I want to ask you a little about your book because to me it was one of the things. I mean, it's as I said, it's full of beautiful projects, but to me the book is also very personal. I thought it was very sort of daring of you that the first project in the book is your new offices in Paris.
Yes.
Now,
Ta-ta!
very few designers would open with their own offices, and then you have your house in Tangier. I believe it's your house in LA that's in the book. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So it is more personal, probably, than some other books. So were you apprehensive about that, or
No,
did
it's
you?
just that, I had so many things to tackle, in the last 5 years. And thanks to COVID, because like that, you could really be under the radar. But I had no website. I had a website which was under construction for so long, I had no social media presence. So I, and I had that new office, I needed to move my entire crew. And so I decided to use the book as a great communication tool to make it very personal to anyone who would actually get the book, and to exchange, some very personal elements with the reader. Having Pamela Golbin, who's one of my oldest friend and best friend, writing the book, and we spend those fabulous moments, her and I, exchanging, and it was just so we could communicate well, with the reader. That's the reason why we share also so many of the vendors, in those technical pages. I it
Yes,
was
you're
it
very
was really
forthcoming with where you get source materials and
yes,
artisans and
yeah.
stuff, which
It's
I think
it's
is
to
very
promote it's to promote everyone, it's to
right,
it's to really display, whoever participates, whoever maker, whoever brand, participate to that ensemble, needs to be sourced out. It's to share with everyone, I think it's always important that if you look for information, that you can actually find it. There's so many
right,
books where you look at beautiful things, but you don't even know who's done what. It's a
right,
whole, a whole glare, and it's very
right.
important. Yet transparency, and also to give information away. I know that as a student, I would have loved, to find all that information.
Right.
To
And also, if we want to keep these artisans and young people coming in becoming artisans, we have to keep them employed. So,
yes.
I mean, I'm sure you keep a lot of people employed, but they're not on your staff full time here, these artisans. So you need to, you know, and
No,
I
but
do
I'm
want to make
very I'm very faithful, to so many of them, because you built really relationships, with them, and also the more same thing again, the more that you work with them, the more you need to push the envelope, of finding new ideas, so their story, moved up, and my story moved up too.
right. And I do want to clarify one thing. When I say you open with your office, we are not talking about, an open plan office in a skyscraper designed by like Gensler or some firm like that. I mean, this office is so beautiful. I would
Thank
move
you.
in. I
Thank
would live
you.
there, Jean-Louis. It is
It's to show, that when you want to create magic, you also need the environment to be quite magical, and the thing is, as designers, we tend to do, our apartment being, the Taj
right.
Mahal,
That's your showcase, right?
and the showcase. But the reality in life, and especially, after a few years, of hard work, is your great apartment, you go just there, to sleep and to take a shower, where you work all day,
It's like eight,
it's where
nine,
you
10,
spend,
12
it's
hours a
where
day.
you spend, most of your time, and so certainly I realized that really needed to value the space, where the synergy within the crew, when the level of comfort with everyone in the crew, there's not one bad seat, and also where you have the clients coming over, where you work, on a very private space, on their home, and certainly, they're just coming into a very, it's an office. It doesn't try to mimic an apartment, it's just a very cool office, and I'm very happy about it, very,
Yeah, it's
very happy.
beautiful. And one
Thank
of the
you.
things that really impressed me was like even your office kitchen is beautiful. And it reminded me, like I remember I think it was your first or second Paris apartment. We published in Elle Decor when I was there. And
Yes.
you had a tiny little kitchen, and I think you just kept the cabinets, that the kitchen cabinets that were there, but then you covered them in silver. And I think that what people don't maybe appreciate about you, Jean Louis, as much as they should, is how practical you are and innovative you are in your solutions. And I'd love for you to talk a little about your process of how you go about thinking about doing a design, doing the decor for a room or an apartment. Like, what do you think about first? Do you think, I know, because is it the ceiling? Is it the floors? Because you have beautiful ceilings, you do. I know you talked a little about the architecture, but what's the process like for you?
The process first is I don't like waste, so if we're talking about sustainable design, I think try first, to do timeless design like that, it doesn't need to be redone every 5 years, Then sustainable design is to also be able to save whatever is savable, on any site, and obviously bring, whatever's missing, whatever's lacking. But I really trust also about recycling, the fact that, yes, there might be some elements. I never throw anything away, when I dismantle something out of an apartment, which can be a piece of paneling or something, which I always save it because I know that eventually, I'm going to reuse it somewhere else. The fact that I'm using so many antiques and so many vintage pieces, this is recycling also, I'm not
Right,
pushing, for
right.
1000% manufactured, that's the opposite, that's, a way of being, ecological, but uh, the way I think of a space is, as mentioned, is really whatever stands out and which is good enough, remains, and sometimes it needs to have just, a various finish, a various, a different color, and then I worked on the floors, and but it's just like I don't know, it's all natural, I don't know how to explain, it's like a doctor, who would just look at you, or a great, massage therapist, who will know exactly where it's wrong,
Where the
it's
tension
just like,
points are.
yes. And also, what it is sometimes in design, designers can come with a preconceived idea about what they're going to do with the space. You cannot do that because it's as like if you were putting the wrong dress on the wrong woman, it just doesn't work, You really need to sit down in that space and to really feel and see how you can emphasize, that space, how you can have the perfect answer so the whole thing become one. Because sometimes, you come with a preconceived idea, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it doesn't stick on, it just doesn't stick. You need to let the space talk to you you need to look at the light, morning, afternoon, evening, you need to look at the views, you need to see if the circulations are great, then furniture layout, because what's unbelievable is you can tell that sometimes you systematically put the furniture on the actual layout, but if you turn the chair towards the window, then certainly when you sit in that chair, you have a totally different experience than if you have the chair being straight in the room, just like the layout, you know. So it's to spend the time, you know, in each room to actually maximize, you know, the effect of each room. You know, that's my recommendation for tackling design. You know, is really to be really open-minded about what can go on. You know, and then obviously you have to respect the client's requirement, but you just manage, you know, to meet in between. You know.
Right. And is it more of a challenge for you because you've done, classic Paris apartments, hotel. You've done houses from the ground up, and you've done like in new development towers. Is it
Yes.
harder for you to work in new spaces that don't maybe have the character, or is it just a different
No, that's the
challenge?
opposite. That's the opposite because in new spaces, you know, you have to bring the character in, you know, and that's what's lovely. You know, that's what's
So
lovely.
it gives you more a blank canvas. You don't
Yes,
mind.
and more rewards, you know, about what you can achieve, you know. Yeah, because it's as like if you're bringing, you know, a history which never really been there, you know, but then it still feel very adequate, you know, because it's still contemporary. We all know it's a
Hmm.
contemporary building, but certainly there's a sense of history which get brought in, you know, and it can be a 10-year history. It doesn't need to be 100 years in history. It's just to make sure that it doesn't look, you know, just brand new, you know,
Right.
and I like also I just like decor, you know, where you can't tell if it's made in the past, if it's part of the present, or if it's part of the future. I love the time span, you know, to be a bit, you know, of a very nice, you know, a very nice
Yeah,
blur.
because
Yeah,
it seems like every project that you do has elements of the past. I
it
mean, I think they
does.
always has something new by a new artisan or craftsman, or Hervé van der Straat and these people who do beautiful things. You incorporate that, but you always have the past in there, and I think that
It's
is
all the ghosts, you know, living in me, you know. It's just like it's those many ghosts, you know. There's many in there, you know. So there's a lot to illustrate, you know. I don't know. I think in my mind, I think that you know, before you can, if you take, you know, a fabulous painter such as Picasso, you know, before he was going to the idyllic abstraction, he painted, you know, the Pierrot, you know, you
right.
remember the very classical, you know,
The,
Harlequin, you know, beautifully painted. And because he knew how to do, you know, those very academic paintings, then he could get far away from it, you know.
right.
And so I always suggest that if you know a bit about history, then you can play with it and then you can get away from it, you know.
Right.
I think, you know, designing, you know, in a big no man's land of not really understanding what got done before must be a bit challenging.
Yeah, and it's something we've talked on a few podcasts about. Young people aren't getting the design history education that maybe they should, and how to
And it's not,
work that.
and it's far less complicated than what you think, you know. It's just like style wise, there's a different style every 50 years, you know. So it's not that complicated, you
Right.
know, really,
Right.
you know. So
Right.
if you go back, you know, to the 18th century, it means you probably need to learn, you know, ten styles, you know, which is, and you'll see that the evolution of the style is very logic, you know, because it goes with the evolution of the politic, you know, it goes with the evolution of the human being, you know, it goes with the evolution of technology. And so then you start reading and understanding the logic of the style evolution. It's all linked, you know, it's not
Right.
like a big, you know, a big mysterious world, you know.
Right. Right. And there are certain periods though that you seem to return to a lot, like the 30s and 40s French style. I mean, Art
Yeah, but
Deco sort of
I love
influence you.
medieval. I love, you know, I love many things. I love art and craft. You know, I love the secessionist period. You know, in Vienna. You know,
I love
I
that
love,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Recently, you know, and in the book, you know, we redid the Yves Saint Laurent Dacha, you know, which was completely, you know, Russian style, you know, to the max, you know, and the clients with whom I worked in the past, you know, were not convinced that I would know how to do that. You know, it's just like, just go and play, you know, it's just like, take as many design risks as you can, you know, that's how it's fun. And that's how you can really have a great evolution is by going through challenges, you know, by going out of your comfort zone. It's super important. And we have the chance, in our business, to literally go anywhere we want, style wise, And so even if it's, a bedroom, a guest bedroom, a children room, you can take so many design risks, you can.
Right. And have you found, now that you're a global force, as I said, Jean-Louis, you've worked around the world. You've worked in India, you've worked in Russia, you've worked, everywhere.
In Hong
Um,
Kong a lot also, yes.
a lot in Hong Kong, and I
Yeah.
think Bangkok. There's a beautiful project in
Yes.
Bangkok that you did.
Lovely. Yes.
So have you found that the expectations of your clients are different in different countries? Like, do Americans have different expectations of you than French or your clients in Bangkok?
The,
Or
the,
is it
the common thread is they always want something slightly French, and the great thing is because, throughout the history, there've been a lot of French colony, English colonies, and things like that. I always find a way, to link that European, perfume, with the local vibe, so it's very contextual. I think, yes, that's probably the common thread because, technologically, all the taps are the same throughout the world, the air conditioning system the same throughout the world. The construction techniques are really not very far, from one country to the other, So now the world is flat, concerning, the actual technology and access to what compose, the renovation or the construction of an interior. The client's expectation, it's they want some of that European, sophistication. Most of the time it's in brand new construction, and they want us, to bring those feeling of those old mansion, those old European mansion, but with a contemporary, very, very fresh, answer, of a contemporary version of those classical mansions. And same for property developments. We're doing those, as you mentioned, those residential buildings where you have, like for example in New York City, 375 units for sale at the Waldorf Astoria. So there's all the amenities, which is over 50,000 square feet that we design, and those 375 units has 180 different types. And we brought something, where certainly is the reminiscence of the 30s, but making it feel very quite contemporary. So it's easily adaptable, to each person's style. So they don't have to demolish the whole thing as they come in. Same thing. Let's avoid waste, So
right?
I think the design, the
And
good
it's a great
design.
history, the Waldorf.
Yes, fantastic. Fantastic. It's such a great DNA. And so in other buildings, which are brand new, it's to bring that kind of sense of DNA. It's to bring that sense of something slightly branded, but branded because it's got an atmosphere to it, because it's got that sense of legitimacy to it. And I think by injecting, a touch of history to many of the design, just as a backdrop, just as a spine, it gives a lot of legitimacy to the actual exercise.
And also, the other thing that I think is interesting is all of your work around the world. It does seem, even though it's very you, it does seem specific to the location. Whether it's LA or Bangkok or a Manhattan Tower, there's always a sense that you know where you are. How
Yes.
do you manage that? Do you think about that? Is that something?
It's so important, it's just like if you take, the local perfume, of whatever you perceive, it's your own perception, of the local vibe, the local aesthetic, the local, and take it and you process it and you actually emphasize it, and you try to inject it in your design, like, for example, that house in Capri, which is in the book, that the Vesuvio is not very far, that Pompeii, that great, pre-Roman, time is not far, you take those elements. So Pompeii is the mosaic, and the straps, that they were using, for their sandals, and then the Vesuvio is the lava, there's a lot of elements you can take like this, and these old stones and things, and you take all this, and you inject it in your design, and you make it almost like a caricature out of it, to make sure that, because people's attention span is so low, that you need to have the space to actually be instantly convincing. People don't take that. They can't spend 3 weeks to understand what you meant,
Right.
They need to
Right.
spend 3 seconds, and being already, very enthusiastic, about it. So that's by emphasizing the actual local vibe of how you feel about the local vibe.
And I'm curious how you do your research because, like you were saying, you sort of take all these different elements. Do you have a library at your office of things that you look at, and do you go to the site? How does
You
it?
go to the
Because you
site. Yeah, you go to the
right,
site. It's what's
yeah,
best. And with your phone, you snap a lot of little details and bits and pieces, and that's how you build up your story. It's by going to the site, you go
right,
to the next door town, the next door village. It takes no time. It's very easy. Then you mix it with your own, DNA, like that. It's not too far from home, and then you have it.
right. Because what you just said, I just found so intriguing. Where you look the straps of the sandals, but also Vesuvius. You take a poetic approach. I think it's wide ranging. You don't have a set idea. You're open to
because
influences.
because guys, at the end of the day, we're all here for a good dream, and so it's like we're all in for a good dream and for childhood dreams. So we need to just like turn it to a bit like almost like a little fairy tale each time. it's
Yes.
uh, it's always convincing and it's always enchanting for everyone. So why not? Why taking everything super seriously? No, it's just like it needs to be captivating.
No, very well said. I think that's what you do, Jean Louis. Is well, your own projects that are in the book, which are stunning, but you also
Thank
can
you.
do that for a client, which is not always easy. I think a lot of some clients are difficult, some clients are fabulous, or whatever. They give you a lot to work with, but you
But
can manage.
with clients, you need to come gradually. Is the problem of nowadays is the clients wants to see the final result within a 3D. So what I suggest first is if you need to start, with a renovation or with construction, start by doing the 3D, which shows the interior finishes with no furniture. Like that, the client already gets used to your idea of design, by just discovering, the whole exercise bit by bit. If you try to show the entire exercise at the beginning, first, it's too soon for you to mature, your actual exercise. And second, it might be completely overwhelming for the clients to see something that they're not ready for.
Right.
So
You have to entice them along.
exactly. It's super important because you're a
Right.
professional and they are not. There's things you understand. There are things they'll be slower to understand. It's normal. It's not
Very
their
true.
business. It's not what they do
Very true.
24/7. And so by introducing bit by bit your idea of design, in the right chronology, that's how you get there. That's how you get to your design and with the client approving, one step at a time, where you're going towards to.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody wants to be presented with a fait accompli. Like this
Exactly.
is what we're doing. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And because they need to mature on their side too. I always tell my clients, I say, guys, if I give you, exactly what you wish now, I'm going to get bored. You're going to get bored in 2 seconds. I'm here to show you what you're going to like in the next 15 years, 20 years. But if I really try to defend that idea, it's to do you good. I'm not here to suggest something you would dislike at the end. Why would I gain out of it? I'm defending that idea because I know you're going to love it. And you know what? In so many jobs, I can present a scheme for a room, and the client is kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa.
So that
They're
happens to
really,
you too.
oh, so
That's good
many
to know.
times. And I push it and I push it and I push it and I push it. And you know what? At the end, that's the room that they like the best. So it's just try to figure that out. It's the fear of the unknown. The human
Right.
being, is paralyzed, by the fear of the unknown. No, it's just I just go with it. That's how you
It's kind
achieve
of like that
wonder.
Diana Vreeland dictum. You got to give people what they don't know they want. You know?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Right. Right.
absolument.
Right.
Absolument.
Okay. One final question, Jean Louis. Again, you were inspired by Henri Samuel. You are now, believe it or not, you're of a age that you're inspiring to a lot of younger designers
Yeah,
and
thank
or
you.
designers your own age even. So who do you admire and look to now? Who's out there that you think that's doing great
It's just
work?
everyone who's working hard, it's just because at the end of the day,
Oh, please.
no, but it is true because the harder you work, the more it translates in the results, so it's just like, it's people who are
Mhm.
actually highly dedicated to their passion, and there's many of them. And I think the more you work, the more it translates, there's no other ways, and the more it's perfected, and you can tell
Right,
where something looks approximative, and when something looks really, really well put together,
right,
and the very well put together is the attention to detail, and it's the numerous amount of hours that you're actually spending around those details.
right, right. There's no substitute for doing the work.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have my old friend Jean-Louis
Thank
with
you,
us here
Michael.
today,
Thank
and
you
I
so much.
encourage everyone to go out and get his beautiful new book, Destinations.
Destinations. Yeah, you have fun because we
And
had
there
a
are
lot of
many in
fun to
here.
put it
It's
together.
it's
Yes.
really a great book, and
Thank you.
thank you, and thank everyone for listening to the Cherish podcast.